Genshin Impact is a team game. Characters live or die by their synergy with other good characters in order to make functional teams. No character can be considered meta based solely on their own individual strength. Without a kit that synergizes with other characters in a meaningful way, characters will simply fall apart in Genshin Impact. That's an obvious fact, of course, but I just wanted to open up with that before diving into the main topic of today's video. Is Duran actually any good? And if so, what makes him good? We'll discuss what makes Duran good with certain characters and whether or not he's a valuable pull for your account. But first, a word from the sponsor of today's video. LD Shop is a safe and reliable top-up site that allows you to buy currency across multiple different games, including Honkai Star Rail, Genshin Impact, among other games. They offer prices at a discount, from anywhere up to 13% to 25% cheaper than topping up in-game. Not only are the prices cheaper, but they make topping up completely effortless. All you need is your server and game ID, and you're good to go. No hassle at all, and no personal information required whatsoever. After purchase, you can see that the Jades are sent to my account within 5 minutes. There are no downsides to using LD Shop for your purchases, as the prices on LD Shop are strictly better than the prices in-game. But the upsides don't stop there. Users who register using my link in the description below will get an exclusive 15% and 5% coupon, which can save you up to $50. Additionally, if you spend $80 in total, you can earn an express supply pass for completely free. If you want to top up at discounted prices with no downsides, using a website and method that has been approved as safe by multiple large content creators in the space, then click the link in the description below to head over to LD Shop and start saving money on your gacha game top-ups right away. First off, if you don't know what Duran's kit does, watch my first impressions video for a brief rundown of his kit. In short, he's a 5-star Xiangling with better uptime, as in his off-field pyro application and damage is always active with no energy issues. Aside from being much more comfortable than Xiangling while doing similar damage as her, the other thing Duran brings to the table is his 20% shred to all resistance types that he reacts with besides Hydro and Cryo. This 20% goes all the way up to 35% res shred when he's paired with a fellow Hexerei character, and this is the main thing that helps Duran synergize so well with other Hexerei characters. It's not just his kit being a 5-star Xiangling that makes him so good, but it's the way he synergizes with and activates the abilities of his fellow Hexerei characters that causes him to shake up team building so much. Let's go through each of the elements and discuss how Duran fits into team comps centered around DPSs of those elements. First off, Hydro teams tend to focus more on Duran's own personal damage since he can't shred Hydro resistance. You can use Duran's Black Dragon form instead of his White Dragon form to buff his own vaporized damage, and this is where his synergy with Mona comes in. By activating both his own and Mona's Hexerei buffs by pairing them together, Duran's personal damage in vaporized teams is enough to easily land him among the top 10 DPSs in the game, which is very respectable when he's also flexible enough to be used in so many other teams as well. Outside of his Mona synergy, he's also one of, if not the best Burgeon character in the entire game due to his easy, on-demand, reliable, and decently fast pyro application from off-field. So whether you're playing him as a vaporized off-field DPS or a Burgeon off-field DPS, Hydro teams tend to focus more on Duran's personal damage, and he's like a modern Xiangling when it comes to the damage he can dish out in these teams, thanks once again to his ability to activate and utilize Mona's Hexerei buffs. Oh, if you weren't aware, Hexerei buffs can only be activated when at least 2 Hexerei characters are on the team. Thus why part of Duran's strength is in his ability to activate the buffs for the other Hexerei characters. Duran isn't required for this. Any combination of 2 Hexerei characters can activate their new buffed abilities, but Duran's individual kit being so strong, combined with his ability to activate the Hexerei buffs, is what makes him so good in so many different teams. For Cryo characters, Duran can't shred Cryo resistance, just like he can't shred Hydro resistance. Again, these 2 elements are the only exceptions to Duran's res shredding capabilities. Cryo in general has moved towards freeze teams due to Escaffier's dominance in that niche, and Duran isn't power creeping Escaffier in that sense, which is a very good thing. Duran is already going to be so strong when paired with every other element, as we'll see, so he definitely doesn't need to be stealing any jobs in the Cryo and Hydro support department. The one honorable mention I want to give is Ridsley, who transitions into being a melt DPS at higher investment, mainly with his C1, which enables him to use his enhanced charge attacks more often, which benefits a lot from him being able to melt it. In these teams, even though Duran isn't able to provide any res shred for Cryo, he's still competitive with Escaffier for higher investment Ridsley players, utilizing his White Dragon mode's faster pyro application to enable Ridsley to melt his charge attacks. For pyro and electro DPSs, Duran's main benefit comes from his synergy with Chevrus, because Chevrus also inherently synergizes with Fischl, another Hexerei character. Obviously, for pyro carries who use Chevrus teams, they need a source of off-field electro in order to utilize Chevrus's buffs, and Fischl is the most reliable and accessible option. Well, thanks to Duran's synergy with Fischl activating both his Hexerei buffs for higher res shred, as well as activating Fischl's Hexerei buffs for more attack buffs, the core trio of Duran, Fischl, and Chevrus makes up such a powerful team core for most pyro and electro DPSs. Obviously, some of the pyro carries will still prefer melt or vaporized teams, such as Movika, but for most of the pyro DPS roster, the new Chevrus core with Duran plus Fischl is competitive with their best teams, if not just straight up becoming their best team, such as for Linny. For the electro DPS roster in particular, the new Chevreuse core utilizing the Hexerei buffs from Duran and Fischl just straight up becomes competitively the new best-in-slot team for the entire roster of electro DPSs, with some exceptions like Flynn's. This is partially because electro DPSs don't have access to crazy amplifying reactions, such as Vaporize or Melt to begin with, so Chevreuse overload teams have always been very strong for electro DPSs, and Duran being an upgrade to Chevreuse teams just benefits them a ton. For Geo and Anemo, Duran is one of the only characters in the game who has access to Geo and Anemo Res Shred. As long as he's paired with another Hexerei character, he's essentially offering the same benefit as the Viridescent Venerer artifact set to Geo and Anemo teams with permanent uptime. I don't need to explain how crazy this is, and as it so happens, he has two Hexerei teammates specifically made to synergize with him in Geo and Anemo teams. For Geo, it's obviously Albedo. The duo of Duran and Albedo is strong enough to work even outside of Geo teams, but in Geo teams, such as for Ito and Navia, Duran and Albedo are the definitive best-in-slot teammates, with the Hexerei buffs letting Duran shred 35% Geo resistance, and then both Duran and Albedo doing huge damage from off-field, thanks to Albedo's Hexerei buffs massively buffing Albedo's personal damage, and allowing Albedo to give some team-wide buffs as well. For Anemo carries, the duo of Duran and Venti is very strong, but they're up against some tough competition from the likes of Farazan. Duran gives 35% Anemo res shred from the Hexerei buff with Venti, and Venti gives 50% Anemo damage bonus to the on-fielder. Compare that to Farazan, who gives similar Anemo res shred and similar Anemo damage bonus, but deals very little personal damage compared to the likes of Duran and Venti. It's easy to see how they can compete with the current premier Anemo support. Obviously, things start to sway in Farazan's favor once you have her at C6, where she also buffs Anemo crit damage. Additionally, Duran and Venti take up 2 team slots just to match Farazan's buffing, but obviously the trade-off is that they deal considerable personal damage. Venti especially shines in AoE scenarios, where he can suck in the enemies as always. Either way, the fact that Duran can be competitive in Anemo carry teams just goes to show how versatile and flexible he is, especially for accounts that don't have C6 Farazan. It should be noted that Duran doesn't need Venti in order to slot into Anemo carry teams either. His Anemo res shred all on its own is enough to pair him with Farazan instead of pairing him with Venti, and that'll work just fine. For Dendro characters, obviously the only Dendro character that would want a Pyro character is Kanish, and for Kanish, Duran is just inarguably the best in slot, since Kanish doesn't have access to the best Pyro options anyway, and Duran's ability to shred Dendro resistance is just very valuable while bringing everything else Kanish would want from an off-field Pyro sub-DPS. Duran's individual strength combined with his synergy with the other Hexerei characters who have all been reworked and balanced with their Durin-synergy at the forefront of their kits is what makes Duran so powerful and also so flexible for so many different types of teams. Don't get me wrong, Duran isn't creating any sort of new meta warping team that causes you to build your account around him, which is sort of what I expect Columbina to do, but Duran is a very powerful upgrade for a wide roster of characters across every element, usually being, at worst, a side grade to characters you might not have available, and at best, an upgrade in both power and in comfort, since he's so easy to use. If we compare him to Escoffier, Escoffier has one specific niche that she completely altered, that being freeze teams. And while Duran doesn't do anything like that, he's much more flexible than Escoffier, while still raising the performance of a lot of different teams. Personally, I am more than happy with the balance of both strength and flexibility that Duran has, especially since, again, the buffs to the other Hexerei Mondstadt characters have been specifically balanced around their synergy with Duran. Duran's early constellations and his weapon also aren't the craziest things in the world, so there's no money bait happening with him either, which I appreciate despite the fact that I will personally be investing into his constellations and weapon just because he's one of my favorite characters. And there's still room for him to improve in the future too. We don't know exactly how they're going to handle the Hexerei characters moving forward, but assuming they add more characters who benefit from the Hexerei resonance, such as characters they've already teased like Varka and Alice and Nicole, Duran will only get even more characters that he synergizes with. Additionally, with the more Hexerei characters they add, the more likely the chances of getting a new Hexerei artifact set, which seems very likely considering Duran has 0 artifact sets that he synergizes well with, which is not the norm for newly released characters nowadays. So I would personally expect Duran to just keep getting better for at least the near future as new artifacts and new Hexerei characters release. So while Duran isn't going to single-handedly shape the entire structure of your account, most accounts will always be able to find some use for Duran when paired with one of the Hexerei characters who are getting buffed. Duran's many synergies makes him a super flexible character across many different teams. To bring it back to the comparison we just made, I like to think of Duran as a less niche but also less defining character compared to Escoffier. Duran isn't warping an entire archetype with his release the way Escoffier did, but Duran is also more widely usable in more teams while having tougher competition from the likes of Movica. And even in teams where he's a side grade to sub DPS Movica, that's still a net bonus for your account due to the ability to free up Movica to be run as her own DPS if you have her available. All in all, Duran is just a shining example of a balance of strength and flexibility, all without breaking the balance of the game, which, in my opinion, is very healthy for the game. But what do you think of Duran's kit? Excited at the prospect of how many different synergies he has with the buffed Hexerei characters and the different teams they can slot into? If you have any questions, leave them in the comments below, and I'll try to answer. Be sure to like the video if you found it helpful or enjoyable at all. Since Duran is certain to get more teammates in the future, such as the rumor rumored Varka synergy, I will definitely be covering all of that once we get more info. So subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on that. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time!